Here is your WESN News on the hour. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Minister rejects claims of water shortage in fatal fire tragedy. Court orders TNTech workers to report for duty amid labor dispute. Appeal denied for convicted man after delayed filing. Court approves extradition of U.S. citizen wanted for murder in New York. Now for the details. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez has denied claims by the fire service of a lack of water during the Arima House fire that claimed the lives of Dabidi Omira MP Lisa Morris-Julian and two of her children on December the 16th. Gonzalez said the area's water supply was adequate, noting that the Hollis system had been ramped up days before the fire and that additional measures were taken during the incident to boost supply. He cited confirmation from the chief fire officer, who reportedly told the Prime Minister there was sufficient water for firefighting. The minister criticized the fire service's earlier statement for misrepresenting the facts, calling for retraction and emphasizing support for grieving families during this difficult time. The Industrial Court has ordered TNTech workers, represented by the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, to report for duty as scheduled and remain available for overtime if necessary. The ruling, issued on December 16th, follows TNTech's complaint of alleged unlawful industrial action, including workers refusing overtime and failing to show up for shifts. The injunction prohibits OWTU members and leadership from engaging in or encouraging any such action, with penalties for non-compliance. The union had previously claimed its actions were peaceful protests outside working hours. TNTech hopes for OWTU's cooperation in maintaining reliable electricity services. The Court of Appeal has denied a man's request to extend the deadline for appealing his conviction and 3-year sentence of hard labor. Justice of Appeal Malcolm Holdip ruled on December 16 that the appellant failed to justify the year-long delay in filing, citing vague explanations about misinformation from prison officers and quarantine. Holdip also found no reasonable prospect of success in the appeal, which alleged unfair amendments to the indictment and exclusion of evidence. The court noted the appellant had served most of his sentence, stressing the importance of finality in legal proceedings and the lack of evidence pointing to a miscarriage of justice. A local court has approved the extradition of 24-year-old Anthony Regis Ashe, a U.S. citizen, to face charges of second-degree murder and firearm offenses in New York. Acting Chief Magistrate Christine Charles ruled that the U.S. met the legal requirements for extradition. Regis Ashe was accused of the 2021 fatal shooting of Sharif Richards in Brooklyn, allegedly linked to a dispute over a marijuana deal. Surveillance footage reportedly tied him to the crime scene, and he was arrested in Trinidad in October. U.S. Ambassador Candice Bond commended the collaboration between Trinidad and Tobago and U.S. law enforcement in securing the arrest and extradition proceedings. Regis Ashe has the right to challenge his detention with a writ of habeas corpus. Well, that's the news on the hour on WESN. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Apologies for a little bit of a late start, but once again on the roads today I had to dodge another motorist, and it has my nerves frayed. Well, that's a little bit of an embellishment, but it is true that I had to prevent myself from getting into another vehicular accident due to the efforts of another driver not considering any of the other cars on the roadway around him. First, he comes from a parking spot. Now, I'm not necessarily looking at parked cars to see how well they've parked, but essentially he looks like a parked car. He pulls out suddenly just in front of me. Luckily, I'm not speeding. I have just enough space to stop. My stop wasn't that sudden, but it was sudden enough. And I realized he just started a half pull out with no indicator on. Something that I would just like to know exactly what he thought he was doing. The road, he or she, I don't know the gender of the driver. But the road was not clear. There was a car coming, and if my memory serves correct, there was a car in front of me. So it was almost as though they were just pulling out because they didn't think about the cars in the lane that they were pulling out into. But then, in a wonderful piece, a wonderful exercise of supreme judgment, halfway sticking into my lane, this car decides to wave me forward, completely not paying attention to the fact that there's oncoming traffic that is not slowing down. They're not speeding. They're driving at a reasonable speed for the road we're on. But the point is, I'm not about to try to maneuver around a car halfway sticking into my lane that will put me into the other lane and hope that the other person stops in the nick of time. And when I say oncoming, he was practically right on top of us. And he's waving me forward to pass. And I'm so upset because basically, and this is one of the things that I will feel bad for if I wave somebody and I realize, oh wait, that's not the best time for them to make their move. So I tend to not do that, right? Because I might not necessarily see everything that they have to look out for. I'm seeing what I have to look out for. Fair enough. But this foolish driver here is waving me confidently while half blocking me. So where was I supposed to go? And it's just one of those things now, do you disregard when people wave you to go through? I don't know what to do anymore. And all of this happened like in the span of 5 seconds. Huh? Again, it wasn't like there was a lot of distance and time and he had a spot and just hesitated. No. He pulled out almost hitting me and then waved me forward and almost, if I paid attention to him, caused me to hit the next car. 2 potential accidents off of one driver's negligence. It's a hell of a way to live. My commute is without traffic, driving at a very normal pedestrian speeds, anywhere 60 to 50 kilometers per hour. We're talking 6 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that. There's no significant, complicated road network that I have to go through or maneuver through. My commute is not supposed to be, Evel Knievel, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome kind of stories and drama, but somehow more often than not it is, and I don't know why. Ironically, the areas where traffic might get a little tricky, I tend to be in a safer situation than areas where traffic should be mundane. I'm driving down a road. It's not a main road, but it is a road where people have enough space, they should be able to see, and they like to do a lot of foolishness. I don't understand. Now, one thing I want to mention before we start off today's daily review, one of the ongoing topics that we have not necessarily been able to get into is my generation and generations after me, how many young people are looking to contribute to society more than just how they would as an individual private citizen. And every now and then, because I have a group chat for my class, my former schoolmates, I'll send a message like that to encourage participation. Now, of course, it's not like everybody could just drop what they're doing at the drop of a hat. But one of the things I thought about today is, I get it. Obviously, to some extent, most of the viewers who will be, at least most of the callers, because at this hour, you're not going to get a lot of young working people watching Talking Point at home. Maybe in the office, but then again, even if it's on the background, in a bank, in an office building, it's not like they could take the time to call in because they're technically on the clock, right? Unless they own the business, but we won't get into that. Now, it's an interesting thing where, to what extent are those who can hear me, one, maybe you are the demographic, a younger demographic, in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, and maybe you should consider getting involved. But then, for those who are in their 60s or 70s that could hear me, potentially the parents or grandparents, dare I ask to what extent are you willing to encourage maybe your grandson, granddaughter, son, daughter, niece, nephew, younger brother or sister to potentially get more involved? Because the analogy I thought of, ironically, is the fact that those who see me on Facebook Sports know I'm a fan of the NFL. And some former players in the NFL, they say they don't want their kids to play. In fact, right now, there's a university team, the Colorado Buffaloes. I can't remember if it's Colorado State, but the point is they have two Hall of Famers coaching on that team. One is Deion Sanders, whose two sons, he basically became a coach because he was frustrated with the coaching of his sons. And as they went from middle school to high school to college, he followed them. And another former Hall of Famer, his sons aren't in coaching. He's there to coach with his friend. And he said he did all that hard work so his children don't have to. And a lot of former players are concerned about the safety concerns, even though they played the sport. Even though they love the sport and probably wish they could still play the sport, but they don't want to see their children take those risks. It's one of those things, right? You're willing to do it, but you don't want to see your children do it. And I do wonder to what extent we also have that at play here, that sort of sentiment, where people are lamenting the state of the country and potentially they may be willing to do something about it, or they may not, which is kind of bad if you want to complain to others about how bad things are, but you're too afraid to do anything about it yourself. And then now here comes the gut check time, right? Because I understand if there will be some parents who don't want their children to get involved in politics or the media or commentary or activism or anything like that. To some extent, you would hope your young people to not be corrupted by the system. And ethical individuals in these spaces, activism, politics, media, tend to be the poorer ones. The financial returns tend to not be there. Even if you're in the States. Because let's be real, a lot of the highly paid journalists that provide really more opinion than news reporting on various cable news channels or networks that have major news broadcasts, they're more personalities for entertainment than journalistic integrity and titans of an industry that is trusted by the people. In fact, I think it was months ago, someone from CNN was on Stephen Colbert, and Colbert said something about the lines of, the trusted CNN journalism, I'm paraphrasing. And the audience automatically laughed. And this is an audience in New York. Now, it could contain some tourists, but generally speaking, on those talk shows, they're more liberal-leaning, the audience. But at the end of the day, it seems as though regardless of your politics, trust in that industry is not always there. And of course, with politicians and activists, it's even more easier to see the argument. Well, why are they so rich if they mean so well? And the ones that mean well tend to not be so rich. So gut check time. What will we do, the people in TNT, with regards to our own individual next generation? Not other people's children. And I'm not saying that the callers who called in are essentially looking to put other people to face the fire and leave their children out, right? But what I am saying is, have we thought about that question? It's one thing for us to be willing to sacrifice our own selves. But at some point, each generation will have to face the harsh reality that the next generation has to be prepared to sacrifice too. And in a smaller way, perhaps part of the issues that we have in society around the world is the fact that too many people of my parents' generation and younger, between me and them, they were so caught up in giving their children a better life that they forgot at the end of the day, at some point, you can't be there to protect them from everything. So they have to learn how to do the hard work themselves. Food for thought. All right. Not much time, so let's go into today's daily review. All right, we'll just hit one story here before the break, and that is the whole situation with the pensions and the bill to amend the pension plan. Although I think, and we said this in the calling segment yesterday, it would probably be more accurate to call it more of a grant than a pension. Now, the minister in a news report defended the situation, and I understood in the article yesterday what she was trying to say. I thought it was reasonable, at least in principle, right? You don't want people to take advantage of the system who could, for a system that's meant to assist the most needy, you don't want people who are not the most needy to have access to it because it's an opportunity cost. For every lower middle class person that accesses something for the lowest of the low, the people at the bottom, there might be someone there who has to do without. And we're talking about survival in some of these cases, right? Not about if you could afford another ham for Christmas or not. Now, it has come out that the AG, with Minister Cox, Minister of Social Development, he has come out to say, no, we're going to pull this back because it was a mistake. Specifically saying that this clause was actually not meant to be in the bill, and that when Cabinet spoke about it, it was not there. Now, let's just assume this to be true. It highlights something interesting with regards to politics. That means that Minister Cox, essentially, she could not have necessarily been fully up to speed with this specific clause and attempted to defend the government's position because that's what she had to do. And to some extent, yes, it is a sentiment of politics where I just have to defend and assume that everything is in order and not show weakness. And, you know, to some extent you understand it. To some extent it borders on the line of, well, how truthful, how disingenuous is this defense, right? But I do think for the most part that the minister was acting in good faith. But the AG went on to say that a staffer apparently included this clause into the bill. He also said that he was not there, so he did not give it a final perusal to, you know, cross his T's and dot his I's. Minister of Public Utilities Marvin Gonzalez was acting, but he does not blame Minister Gonzalez. He said he will take responsibility. It's very interesting because on this point specifically, this minor point where he was not in the country, government has to continue business, he even said so himself, and Minister Gonzalez was the acting AG, but he said, I am the AG, I will take responsibility. I am not about to shift blame. That's one aspect of this whole case, I think, is something that I like to see. Right? Something happened, you know, the buck stops here. And I will commend the AG for that. Right? A lot of people might say, oh, he's covering up or politics at play. Listen, in any organization, things like this happen. And this shows to some extent good leadership, whether or not he is considered a leader in the party and cabinet or not. And I think on this issue, to some extent, he is taking lead on it. And for the most part, ironically, I say that the government has a perception deficit, but I am tending to want to believe this scenario because I think it's believable. Also because outside of the fact that the $25,000 threshold probably was too low or might have been too low, I don't know what the figures are, so I don't have enough information to really make an accurate judgment, but I suspect that could be the case. Outside of that, without knowing much about the circumstances around this whole situation to begin with, I was willing to take the government at face value that, look, we are trying to prevent exploitation of an assistance program, right? And if there was someone to say anything to the contrary, I'm willing to hear that. But one of the things is, if the government makes a claim and no one is willing to challenge it, I'm not just going to automatically disbelieve them. Now, so as the AG has presented this situation, I am willing to say, all right, fine. You know, I'm willing to accept it at face value. That doesn't mean that it's all good, right? So the Minister of Social Development had to go out yesterday. She made a statement. She had to defend the position. She had to take some hits. The opposition was trying to use this situation as another thing to criticize the government for, which is understandable, although then, you know, to some extent, you need to do more than say, and unfortunately, how the minister phrased her response, and I do believe the use of the word pension in this case really is not well thought out, because if this is a grant, another pension, and it's something that people do not pay into, and it's not like a pension meant for government employees or even the citizenry, it's just meant as some sort of an assistance program. I think one of the reports used the word pension grant, the term pension grant at one point. The thing is, where did this all start? And now we have to ask the AG, because the claim is a staffer put this in after Cabinet met and spoke about a version that did not include this clause about the $25,000 and the eligibility clause of if you have a savings account over $25,000, right? So they're going to withdraw the bill and they're going to present the version that they wanted or intended to present. Who is the staffer? How was this allowed? Why did this happen? Has it happened before? These are important questions for two things. One, are there staffers who essentially are meddling with legislation and we don't know? What are the potential consequences of that? Have any pieces of legislation like that gone through? And then on top of that, it's very interesting that we have a situation. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm not even saying that this is most likely. I'm just saying there's a small possibility that this might be the case. Is this clause, amendment that was put in to change the eligibility, was it potentially a plant? A Trojan horse? I'm not saying it's likely, but I am throwing the possibility out there because I want it to be discussed. And if the consensus is it's unlikely, fine. And if the consensus is, hey, it might be likely, maybe it should be investigated. Was this political bubble? Was there an agenda behind this? People think that there was an agenda with the whole hot mic incident. People think there was an agenda in other things when other ministers or parliamentarians or even opposition members get thrown in a situation that makes them appear in a bad light. Did this happen here? Our politics at times could be juvenile and at times could be ugly. So I can't say that the possibility is zero. Maybe it's just 1%, maybe it's just 0.1%. But I'm throwing that out there. Regardless, I think the real thing is, one, I do appreciate the government's quick response and the AG's stance on the situation, but it leaves us with questions with regards to exactly how far would situations like this go with regards to staffers doing things apparently, or the implication is, outside of the awareness of members of cabinet. Is it just limited to the AG's office? Does it happen in other different types of ways in other ministries? We don't know. And this, people might think, yes, this might be a one-off, this might be a minor thing, this might be an honest mistake, etc., etc., etc. I would like to get an affirmative with regards to what is going on with this situation. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll switch gears slightly. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Having trouble Christmas shopping? Check out the Kids Shop today. For all your officially licensed kid character merchandise, we carry characters such as Disney Princess, Frozen, Spider-Man, Paw Patrol, Sonic, My Little Pony, and much more. Call or visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Nationwide delivery available. The Kids Shop, for all your licensed kids character merchandise.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience.
Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
So a minor controversy, depending on how you look at it, maybe it's not minor, maybe it's major, has been stirred up by the words of one Philip Edward Alexander. Now, here's the question. Exactly what do you think the controversy is about? And the reason why I ask that is he brings an interesting point. I just don't know if I like the way and the timing, right? Not just the timing, not just the way, but together, that he brings across this point. This is a touchy subject and one that I was hoping to not necessarily avoid, but like to not do myself. You have to balance the needs of the national conversations with the needs of the moment for the people involved, I think, to only be fair as fellow humans. And maybe Mr. Alexander went a little bit too far, perhaps. Now, there's a viral clip about his comments that apparently circulated on social media. I am not 100% sure that this is the clip. I got this from, I believe, his Facebook page. So I would assume he wouldn't have two clips on the same topic that are somewhat controversial at the same time. So you could potentially judge for yourself. The editing is for some bits of minor profanity. Outside of that, we present to you Mr. Alexander with today's Cue This.
That she is a proper bullshit artist. That she didn't hold her belly and ball for Granny who throat yesterday 2 nights ago. She didn't hold her belly and ball for the 4 divers who died in the pipe. She didn't hold her belly and ball for none of the other 21 people who burned to death. She in the cabinet. They are the government. They could fix all of this. She didn't hold her belly and ball for Ezekiel, Faith, and Caden. 3 little children who burned to death in Rokrinook in Maraval in July 2021. That case took me all the way to the fire service headquarters inside the chief fire officer office, and they threw me out in the right road, threatened to call police. All kind of. I did a video, and the only thing that stopped me pursuing it is that same exact day, the Kerban family reached out to me, and about the divers stuck in the pipe, and the rest is history, because you know I am the one who brought that into the public space. I don't tell you, if that stink PNM government and bullshit hypocritical artists like Camille Robinson Regis had taken action after Ezekiel, Faith, and Caden held on to that wrought iron and burned to death in Marabal, the Lisa Morris, Julian, and her family would most likely be alive today. I am the only politician who has repeatedly spoken about the state of the fire service. I have interviewed the president of the Fire Service Association twice and made the information public repeatedly.
So, first of all, at most I believe I have indirectly indicated the fact that I don't like, I won't say hypocrisy, but the fact that that we've had tragedies and they haven't hit home to the politicians like this have hit home. You know, even to some extent the opposition, they're not necessarily willing to play political games per se with this issue, because to her credit, the opposition leader was asked about it and she did two things. One, she admitted she wasn't sure about what Philip said. And she doesn't think he may have said anything that would have prevented them from continuing working together, the PEP and the UNC, in the future. But she did not look to condone any sort of criticisms or attack on the PNM at this time over this issue. She was, I believe, and to be fair also, she was, I think, now looking to sign the condolence book. So the venue she was at, it would not have been appropriate to start a political bacchanal in that venue. Credit to her for not doing so and for being, I believe, essentially respectful in that moment over this whole situation, right? She said that in public duty as we mourn the passing of our colleague, so I will not endorse those statements. She's not aware what they are, but she's not willing to endorse it. I think that's essentially responsible. It has members of the PNM in an uproar, and to some extent, I can understand why, because I could understand having criticisms for Camille Robinson Regis. The problem is, right now, I don't think anyone doubts those are genuine tears. They're not crocodile tears. And to some extent, I get it. I think somebody asked yesterday, why is it that now they're balling? Why is it that now, because it happened to one of them, they're feeling something? Well, part of that is, unfortunately, human nature, and it happens to all of us. It happens to all of us because there is a general sense, I think, it might not be to a large extent, it might be a minor thing, but I think there's too much. However much you think it is, I think it is too much. There's too much apathy over crime and violence. People say, oh gosh, there's too much violence and it's scary, but to what extent are we as a society doing something about it? No, what we're saying is, y'all fix it. The same people who we complain about and we call incompetent, y'all fix it. Magically wave a wand and fix it. We say y'all don't know what y'all are doing. We say y'all don't have the ability to fix it, but we still want you to fix it somehow so that we don't have to fix it. There's a degree of apathy because the crime for a lot of us has not happened directly. I haven't had a relative be kidnapped. Knock on wood, real fast for that one. So I don't know what that family felt when their son was kidnapped early in the morning and, you know, fortunately has been released. So I don't know, hopefully it was just a mistake in any case and the family's not being targeted by something nefarious. But I don't know. I don't know what it's like for the families of murder victims. Knock on wood again real fast. So it's easy and it's natural for human nature to say, I'm not a part of that. Now, yes, to some extent, the government deserves criticism, I think, over how the fire service has been resourced and overseen. But first of all, it's not even clear that this situation is a good example of the consequences of the mismanagement, whatever or however, if there is mismanagement. Because no one has said that you need to tell me that the fire station that was around the corner was under-resourced. What we do know is that their fire trucks were elsewhere when this fire happened, right? What is their authorized strength? Is their authorized strength what they have now? Are they under the authorized strength? Now, yes, it's the government that has to go through these motions, but my point is, this is not necessarily the best example to the wider issue with the fire service. And then also, it's not clear with regards to who did what and if there was what. And there are conflicting reports and competing reports and contradictory reports about most of the controversial aspects of this case. So I am not willing to make, not that he made completely definitive statements or absolute statements, but I think maybe he was jumping or rushing to conclusions before, and I don't know if we'll ever know the full truth, but at least you have to acknowledge the fact that, look, all the details are not clear. What about the Maraval fire would have, what changes that the Maraval fire would have prompted, would have led to an improved situation here? I don't know. And then I am not willing to say that it's only the politicians at fault with regards to this situation. But more importantly, I understand that, yes, if you want to be very harsh, and there's some truth to this. There's some truth to the fact, I didn't necessarily want to be this harsh, but there's some truth to the fact that, look, you're balling now, but what about all of the other people who were in this situation, whether from accidents or from crime? You're balling now, right, I get it. It doesn't necessarily make them look the most genuine with regards to the wider scope of things. But at the same time, does anyone doubt that they are genuinely balling? That they did have to face this situation? And that maybe now is not the time to rub their noses in it? Because if you want to say that you are better than them, well then I suggest you always consider being better than them. Showing more class than them. Whoever them are, or because there's multiple parties that have not yet formed an alliance. A minister who I believe was well enough liked by all sectors of society, including her neighbors. She passed away. Her 25-year-old daughter passed away. A 6-year-old child in this case also passed away. To some extent, whatever you want to complain about the government for, they are directly feeling the consequences of this situation, whoever's fault it is. It's not just somebody else has to deal with the consequences. So they are separate and apart, and we could deal with the normal political back and forth as usual. And I think to some extent, listen, you want to complain about the government, that's fine. But not right now in this way. Because at the end of the day, it is a tragedy, and we have to also balance off. Let's not politicize issues like this. Let's be careful. So I feel ironically, this is similar to some of the Prime Minister's statements where he took relevant, important points and he kind of said it in a bad way, and then it pulled attention away from the point he was trying to make, and it made it all about how we could say that. And I think this is something similar. I think that Mr. Alexander was a little bit too zealous, and maybe his intentions are good, or maybe it's political bacchanal, and he wants a cross to beat the PNM with. But regardless, I think that there's a very real risk, and it might have already happened, that his commentary is not about the content of what he said, the parts that actually might be pertinent and significant and matter. I'm not going to say all of it does. But now it's turned into he and what he said and how he could say that. And it's basically distracting us from the matter at hand. And we could potentially get into the matter at hand. We should hopefully have our guests. If we don't, we will, right? The actual technical concerns over this situation are a bit complex, and I hope that we get the truth out of it, but I'll save that commentary maybe for later. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll see if we have our guests for today. Stay tuned.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
All right, as we wait for the guests, we'll get into the technical matters of the details there. One of the stories that I was hoping to get through with the Daily Review, if we had time, is the fact that the Prime Minister is looking for a probe into the circumstances that led to the untimely deaths of Lisa Morris Julian and her children. Now, the headline says probe into the fire service response, which I find interesting. A probe into the fire service response, because then, at least for two daily newspapers, the first paragraph says circumstances surrounding tragic deaths. Because if it was the case that this is formally, so we don't necessarily know what it is for sure, right? Well, actually, I take it back. Just double checking the Prime Minister's comments. Why wasn't there a better response with a fire station on the corner? Right? Now, apparently, he did, the Prime Minister, and this kind of runs close to the whole terms of reference situation with the Auditors General. So I was very much hoping, but I forgot about that part there. I was very much hoping that the investigation was more open-ended in what they were going to look into. Now, that said, why there was not a better response from the fire service around the corner, that could just be him kind of saying it to the media or the press at the event he was at. As he was unveiling a plaque at West Park in Digger Martin yesterday. I believe this is where he made those comments. Right? So it does not necessarily mean that that's how it was formally or officially framed with regards to the instructions to the Minister of National Security to set up a committee to do this investigation. That's number one. Number two, technically speaking, just because they say investigate the fire service, or just because they frame it in a way of investigating why the fire service response was insufficient, doesn't mean that the investigation is going to limit itself to the fire service alone. Now, if it is politically motivated, they'll probably do that because that's what the politicians want. If the investigators are concerned more about doing a good job about investigating, then they will investigate the fire service, yes, but they'll investigate other things too to find out what contributed to the incident that happened. Now, one of the things is apparently, like I said, I believe the Prime Minister asked about problems with water, right? He asked, I believe, the Minister of Public Utilities. We know what his response or what his official stance on his statement is on this, right? But apparently, CFO Hutchinson did admit that the Prime Minister also asked the fire service if water challenges affected their response to the fire. And apparently, the Assistant Chief Fire Officer, in Hutchinson's presence, said that there was no issue with the water supply. This was so as we had in attendance a water truck from the corporation, and the Arima fire station crew was able to return in time with 10,000 liters on the tanker so assigned. So there's a water truck from the corporation and I believe an appliance with a tanker. Now, generally speaking, usually water that a fire truck or a tanker could carry might not be enough in terms of sheer amount, sheer volume, right? But I think essentially, it seems to the fire service leadership, they had enough water. The thing is, Hutchinson also insisted, apparently, this is how one newspaper is reporting it, there will be no retraction of the fire service's initial report that there was a lack of water in the area to respond to the inferno. Now, could that mean that they were waiting on the Arima truck and the corporation's truck? Maybe, right? But then, to some extent, why was it phrased that the Assistant Chief Fire Officer said there was no issue? Why was it phrased that way? Depending on if it was a timing issue on when the truck-borne water became available. Because if it was available from the start, then we have to ask, he said there was no issue with the water supply. And this is the thing. There are a lot of conflicting, just from the fire service, there are different statements that leaves me with more questions and answers. So I welcome this investigation. Now the question is, to what extent is it going to be political? And political in this case may not just mean political because we want an outcome. Political in this case might mean that the politicians, this hit close to home, emotions are running high, so they're going to maybe not necessarily insist on an outcome, but they're gonna push for an outcome, and it might be a premature one, potentially. Will this be a responsible investigation? Not because there will be corruption, but because there will be stakeholders who are technically in charge, who are close to the situation, and may not be exercising patience, at the very least. Let's just put it that way. So, that I wanted to point out. I find it's very, the finger pointing, I get it. I have no issue. Investigate everybody. Investigate WASA, investigate the Ministry of Public Utilities, investigate the fire service, investigate the chief fire officer, investigate the fire station in Arima, investigate everything, investigate the water supply, investigate the equipment, investigate cabinet documents to say what did they project with regards to the needs of the fire service. What should be the operational structure and the authorized strength of the fire service? When was the last time that was looked at? What were the conclusions from the last time that was considered? What was the justifications for the situation that we have now in terms of resources, whether breathing apparatus, fire tenders, hoses, etc., etc., etc.? Investigate everything. Because at the end of the day, there are too many questions. There are too many conflicting reports, and I don't think this is just about water. I also don't necessarily think in the case of this tragedy, it's just about, well, this station doesn't have a truck or that station doesn't have a truck. Because the Arima station apparently had a truck, at least. They responded to a fire. What about the fire officers' procedures in situations like this? What's the plan? What's the plan if there was a fire in Port of Spain when potentially the Port of Spain trucks were going to Arima, according to one newspaper report? What's the plan when we have multiple incidents? How is the fire service going to triage the scene? I think this, more than anything else, because that's what this tragedy revealed to me, that we may not necessarily have a good, proper plan or infrastructure or systems in place to deal with more than one fire at a time in a geographical location too close to each other. And because of that, we might have unnecessary loss of life and property, but more importantly, life, because we're not prepared with harder, more complex scenarios. We just kind of wing it. That's what it feels like. I don't know if that's what the case is, but I hope the investigation goes into everything. Of course, there's also an investigation on the cause of the fire that also needs to be ascertained. But that might actually be a separate and parallel investigation. Or not. We'll see where it goes. Let's take a break. Our guest is here. We'll be right back after this.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Here's your chance to win a bicycle, a ride-on, or a hoverboard. Shop at dbesttoys.com and spend $300 or more to win big.
We've got Barbie,
Hot Wheels, Gel Blasters, Ride-ons,
Leapfrog,
Nerf, bicycles and tricycles.
Greco, and Wonder Baby.
Visit us in store at Forces flagship McBean, Moubuchon Port of Spain,
Eastgate Smart and M6 Plaza Endeavour.
Merry Christmas, everyone!
Having trouble Christmas shopping? Check out the Kids Shop today. For all your officially licensed kid character merchandise, we carry characters such as Disney Princess, Frozen, Spider-Man, Paw Patrol, Sonic, My Little Pony, and much more. Call or visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Nationwide delivery available. The Kids Shop, for all your licensed kids character merchandise.
All right, and we're back here and talking about the WSND Content Capital, and we weren't able to have him on Monday, but we have him here today. A little late, but we're also a little late ourselves, but we have with us ASP Christopher Arun. Yes, good morning, ASP. Morning. Now, I know you were here to talk about something else, but we have this whole breaking news. I don't know if you could just give, what do you know with regards to the kidnapping and the recovered kidnapping victim?
Right, having spoken to my seniors, I understand that the young man was recovered yesterday. He was taken for medical attention, and the anti-kidnapping unit is currently pursuing leads in respect to the alleged perpetrators. So they're working on it as we speak.
Was there any ransom demanded?
None that I know of, no.
Because I think for me, I'm now aware of the story because of the articles in today in the morning papers.
Yeah.
How long? Because it doesn't seem like he was taken for more than
no, I think it was
24
like
hours or less.
I think it was like 24 to 48 hours. Yeah.
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 So this is something of a weird scenario where they take him
Right.
in a very, I guess, for lack of a way to put it, a very bold or slash aggressive, professional fashion, what have you.
Yeah.
Right? To then just release him, because I know in the past.
Well, we never know the full circumstances unless we investigate.
Right.
So that's what the idea is, to get behind the information as to what caused the kidnapping, what contributed to it, what was the reason. So it's part of the investigation. We must come to the conclusion at some point in time.
Kidnapping of a 4-year-old boy. Now.
14.
14.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's just, slip of the tongue. Now, with that said, well, we still have safety concerns for shoppers this Christmas.
Of course.
And road safety concerns. Actually, I had someone almost caused me get into a traffic accident twice. First to hit him, then to hit somebody else.
Right.
Not that it was a high-speed situation. It's just dotishness.
Well, I mean, I have seen vehicles skidded off the roadway at 5 kilometers an hour.
Right, okay.
So it's sometimes it's based on road conditions. So, you know, there's maneuvers you could utilize to get the vehicle back on track and whatnot.
Yes.
So, you know, defensive driving is a hell of undertaking to learn how to drive better on the nation's roadways defensively and to avoid accidents. So that's not just the roadway. We understand that based on the recent amount of accidents, fatal as well, we recognize that persons have not been adhering to the road safety standards. If you're drinking and driving, if you have alcohol at all, you should not consider driving.
Yeah.
And I think we have to go beyond the drivers here. We have to go to the persons selling the alcohol, the persons entertaining our persons who are attending functions. So you might be going to an office party and indulging in alcohol, and the persons you are with are allowing you to leave having drunk alcohol.
Even better, your peers are saying, oh gosh, you can have a drink.
Yeah.
You can have a drink. No, I'm driving. No, you can drink. You're not a man. Yeah.
So we have to get away from that. We have to invest in our colleagues and our friends and our families.
Although, to be honest, because every now and then, and I'll tell the story to your counterpart, or if there was, like yourself, someone else, on my 10-minute commutes, or 15, depending on traffic, right, I would end up in situations where people almost hit me because of how they're pulling out of a park, no indicator. Or in this case, he did that. He pulled out. I was almost going to pass him when he decides to pull out, no indicator, and then he's waving me forward, but there's an oncoming car and he's sticking out. So I have half a lane to try to squeeze one whole car through to not hit anybody. And I was like, usually my default is, I'm not going to go.
Right. So,
like, I'm just not going to go.
Yeah, just take it.
I'm going to wait and you go. I don't want to.
You have to be cautious.
Now, with regards to shoppers and safety concerns, first of all, and I always try to bring this up whenever I see it in the press, and this week, this was since earlier in the week, but I'll bring it up now since it's pertinent. Facebook Marketplace, once again.
Prevalent as usual. We're begging citizens, if you have something to sell on Marketplace, meet at your local police station, or any police station. Meet at the police station, go inside, speak to the person in charge.
But some of these stories about they went to buy a car, the first story in the article, I didn't read the rest, but the first story in the article, they went to buy a car and then someone told them to go down an alley.
Right.
Like, I'm not even at this point, I've reached the point where even if you're not going to listen to the police and do it by a police station, don't listen to a man to go, just go down that alley.
Right, so those are maneuvers by criminals to ensure that you're not being followed, that you don't have backup, that you're by yourself. So they may tell you to come to one location and then change your location. Okay, not KFC, sorry, not this location. Let's go to another location, a different public place. So it's about you
not
moving
this mall, not this restaurant, not this
So they take
supermarket.
control of the environment because they're in the environment. They want to take control of it.
But also it could be, not here that's slightly public. Let's go here that's even less traveled, there's less eyes.
Or even they have persons set up there to look out for them. So they have persons that assist them in their endeavors.
And when you say it's fair, I know we have calls. We'll go to the calls right after this question.
Yeah.
When you say it's fair, people need to understand. Similar to the office drinking thing, or
Yeah.
when you're out and your friends, you're the designated driver, but they still want you to drink. Because I've had that too, where people like they're uncomfortable to drink when you're not drinking. They need you to drink.
Right. I think anybody having alcohol should not drive at all.
But that same kind of peer pressure thing, I wonder if so upon you're scared, like, be a man, the car is right here, come and get your car. It's like, no, I think it's fair to say everybody should default. Times are too risky. I am not doing anything just to prove how confident I am.
I think there are options available to members of the public, like, I don't think we have Uber, but we have other ride-share services and whatnot that assist. I think there are a lot of persons with credible backgrounds that work for these companies, and you should take advantage, if not utilize them for these simple things, even shopping.
Now, okay, if it's something like you're buying a bike, a phone, an appliance, clothes, okay, maybe you do that in cash. But I think now also, if you're looking to buy a car, this whole thing about taking money to buy a car, even if it's a cheap car, in cash, to somebody who you don't know. If you know the people, maybe, and even, well, I'll say maybe then you take the risk, right?
Yeah.
But you still have to transport the cash, right?
I recently spoke to someone. They called for advice. They wanted to purchase a vehicle. I think it was like $25,000. So I said, okay, well, purchase it, but carry a mechanic. And what they did, when they went, the person demanded that they use cash. So I was like, well, who has that amount of cash on them at any? So I said, well, make arrangements to pay him through the bank. The person didn't want to do an online transfer. They didn't want to wait on the cash, like go to the, bring the cash another day. I said, well, convince them to keep the vehicle. You go get the cash, meet at a best option, location, so you can hand over the cash.
Yeah, at that point,
the guy did not want to take those options at all. He needed to get the $25,000 immediately. Well, I told him it's hard luck,
Yes.
Yeah, move on from that.
It's better to move on from that, right? Because
it's too good to be true. It's too good to be. I mean, they were getting a real good deal on the vehicle.
And I think, too good to be true, exactly. I think people need to understand, I get it, you might not want to trust the bank and electronic banking, but listen, you got to weigh the pros and cons, right? Risk to your life, potential loss of life, or loss of more property because it's your phone, is your wallet, and whatever else that they'll try to fleece from you.
I think, the online transfer would have taken 3 days. So your money was sure, and he keeping the vehicle until the money comes across.
All right. Okay, there's more that we could go just on this topic alone, but I think it comes back to the fact that people stop acting how, you're not less of an adult or a man or a woman or whatever to say, I don't trust the situation. It needs to be under this framework because times are too risky now. Protect yourself, right? If they don't understand, then maybe just don't bother doing business with them because they're not having any sort of consideration for you. We have callers on the line, so we'll take the first caller now. Good morning, caller, on here.
Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Morning.
I know you were in a most important segment regarding the challenges that we would encounter at this time of the. However, Sean, I couldn't help but go back to your earlier part of your program where you were speaking to the issue of what I would want to consider to be the most important.
Caller, we lost you for a second there. I don't know.
For this morning. And I really must commend you for how you itemized the areas that should be investigated. I appreciate very much the concern that you didn't leave out the cabinet, and you felt that we needed to see the cabinet note. That has to be investigated.
Yeah.
That had to do with allocations and what have you for fire services and fire departments. That is perhaps something that is necessary, and I hope that whoever does this investigation will be true to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, but above all, through to the people who have lost their lives, the families that have lost lives in this fire in Arima. This is what I consider to be a really serious matter of national importance. And it is not something that we should be playing politics and rant and rave at this time. We must leave them alone. Whoever is concerned about whether Minister Robinson Regis was over-griefing, we must leave them alone, because I could understand Minister Robinson's grief. This is a serious matter. And it is somebody she would have worked with, she would have schooled, she would have helped to grow as a politician. And therefore, she is entitled to grief like that.
Yeah.
And so, whoever makes politics of this matter is not a patriot and should be discarded forthright. That much I have to say on the matter.
Thank you, caller. We have another caller waiting, so we'll take the next call. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning to the superintendent. A couple of issues. Are we going to see the resignation of the current AG? Because, again, he has deflected and put the blame on a public servant, and he's a public servant also. So I don't know if the whole of the cabinet is suffering from a good boy syndrome. You make a huge mistake, and you're patted on your back, and you move forward. So I expect him to hand in his resignation, because he's looking foolish and trying to deflect. I mean to say in 2023, that act must be circulated to the whole cabinet, and they have to read it, and they have to know who and when that's slipping. So don't make that an excuse. The other issue with this, the passing of and the tragedy of the thing, you know who I have not heard within all this argument and all this through and fro? Has WASA made a statement? WASA just basically recruited 24 assistant director. Did they come out and say anything? Because it appears the Minister of Public Utilities is acting as the CEO. They have to come and tell us, and has to be honest, if there was a scheduling of water in Arima and in that area. And least of the issue, I would like to know if Ms. Morris had any fire prevention apparatus within her kitchen or within the house. And I'm talking about the basic thing, a fire extinguisher. And the other thing, if there was a leak within the thing, somebody would have sniffed it, because the gas, the propane gas is highly scented. And the other issue is that why they are blaming the fire service, or appears to be blaming, is not the fire service issue. And back to Ms. Morris, she was a school teacher. And I'm saying a school teacher has the responsibility for the safety of all her school kids. And if you have that sense and that purpose in school, it will translate for your home environment. I'm going to have a nice morning.
I need to just push back on that last point now. We do have another call waiting, but I'll push back on that last point now. Some of the criticism of the fire service from the neighbors, which is why I say there's conflicting reports, right? Some of the neighbors say there was water, some of the neighbors say there wasn't water, some of the neighbors say the fire service didn't do enough, they were late, etc., etc. The fire service says, no, we weren't late, what have you. Here's the thing, right? The fire service is also using this issue to say, you see, we have problems, blah, 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 blah. So I get it, but they're also kind of weighing in and using this issue for better or worse, whereas I am not entirely clear this is the best example for the circumstances they are talking about being under-resourced, because on the surface, at the least, it doesn't seem as though a lack of fire appliances was the cause of this tragedy, but rather maybe a lack of proper planning, proper procedure, maybe from the legislation or the cabinet level. We'll get into that later, but we do have a caller on the line. So this is trickier than what it is, right? But the people, some of the public is blaming the fire service. We have Faisal on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Caller,
go ahead.
what I am saying, Sean, that amendment to the bill, it wasn't in like a surprise pocket. So the ministers would have been what was in the bill. So to come and cop out and blame a public servant, I mean, to me...
Wait, you're saying the ministers would have seen what was in the bill?
Of course.
Well, the
of
thing
course,
is,
Sean,
technically, what the AG is saying is they did look at the bill, they spoke about the bill, the cabinet approved to put this to Parliament, and what they consider did not include this clause. That's what the AG is saying.
Should I take that argument? Because I recognize you have been advancing that argument this morning. So should I then take it that the same note that Colin Imbert read with the false information on the first time, can we blame our public servant for that as well?
No, but they're not. But in the case of Colin Imbert, he's not saying that a public servant added things
No,
to
but
the note.
I am saying to you, but he had to come back and retract what he said a day after.
I don't think those situations are the same, caller.
And the other, just now, don't run. The other thing with respect to Mr. Hines, I think he has to be called to book because my information tells me that the fire services budget was cut from $11 million to $4 million this time. So they have 7% that is out of fire tenders. They have 2 that is completely closed. So I get a Philip feeling the pain just as Camille Robinson Regis would have felt the deceased lady, and he is representing the wider function, and I know what he's doing. We are focusing on the Arima situation, but there are lots of pain to commend Philip Alexander. A lot of people want to say it is politics. Everything is centered and surrounded by politics in Trinidad and Tobago, my friend. So let's not fool ourselves.
Thank you, caller. Sorry, you are kind of half cutting out there, and we do have another caller waiting. We have Dabidi, thank you. We have Dabidi on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
A very pleasant morning, Sean, and morning to you guys. I'm in total agreement with Louis, and normally I can make my own judgment and point to myself. But Sean, I am here this morning to boldly criticize you. I know of your capacity and your capability. And you see what Philip Alexander said there? You are just slapping him on the wrist and saying, good boy. Sean, you know, it's either you're in support of what Philip did or you're not in support of it. And what Philip did is so atrocious, and it is a slap in the face of any politician. So it's either you're going to come out and criticize him, or you're not going to criticize him, or don't even comment on it, because Philip Alexander he has gone way, way below the white line. And the kind of words that to describe his comments, I can't even use it on television this morning. So continue having a good program, but please, you could come out, and I know you could blast him for 6 way out of the ballpark. Yes, I mean, based on his statement, I'm not talking about him personally.
Yes.
Based on the statement that was made.
Yeah.
You know, and wonderful program as usual, but in times like these, and Louis said it too, Philip has gone way, way, way beyond the call of any politician, and it's too dirty. I mean, politics is hardball, eh?
Yes.
But that is not even politics. That is going way, way past. It's so unethical and unmannerly. You know, so have a nice day, and hope the officer fills in a wonderful spot. But with respect to the police, I don't know why the police not listening. They're not listening, and they just hard-headed. The executive of the police service need to listen more and allow the decision making should come from the ground. Listen to the ground. You'll have a nice day. talk to you later.
Thank you, caller. First of all, I'll say this. I suspect that the various arms of national security have similar problems like that. Right? I don't think this is unique to the police service, however we consider them to be. And to some extent, one could even make the case that it might be worse in some of the other services, right, with regards to accountability and job performance. And I think the fire service is not exempt to some of these things, at least on a minor way. But it's interesting you said that because the other caller was defending Philip, I believe, and I was about to say, before Dabadi, we took the Dabadi call that, look, what Philip said, because he was criticizing the government, saying, you're hypocritical, now you want to ball tears, but what about these other times when we had tragedies? Where was the emotion, right? The thing is, what I said was, look, and because of the situation, caller, I kind of really don't want to make this more political than it is. And when I get emotional, people tend to view it as political. Well, I mean, but I'll say this, he could have said what he said in a better way and probably at a better time.
For me, in security, I'm not too clear with what the conversation was about, but I mean, the season, this time of the year, there are a lot of reports emanating from concerning fire safety.
Right.
So, I mean, it highlights all the calls and all the
electrical.
Yeah. You have a lot more sockets, you have a lot more electrical equipment, lights.
You have a lot more
going on.
Decorations that might be flammable and extension cords and
Yeah, children at home, persons, they're locked in, you know, for their own safety. It might unfortunately be that, yes. So it does highlight the need for...
Concerns about burglar proofing, maybe making a house unsafe for fire?
Could be, but I have seen burglar proofing adapted to be treated differently in a fire situation where it could easily be maneuvered. But I mean, at this time of the year, safety is our main concern. Fire safety is also our main concern. We need to put things in place. I mean...
You see, that's the other thing. We don't know. There's so much about this that we don't know to just kind of put it down to, well, the fire service response or the availability of water.
Right.
There's so much other things that could have been
at play. We need to control our own households, especially when it comes to safety and fire safety.
Yes.
Yeah, look at the equipment, look at even a simple thing as the fire extinguisher in your home. I have 2 or 3 home, one in the kitchen especially. In case of fires, these things are needed to be readily available. I don't know under what circumstances.
At the very least, you could use it to maybe carve a way out through the fire.
Yeah.
If you can't out the whole thing.
Installing fire sprinklers, insurance for your home. I mean, loss of life is the greatest detriment to any situation. I mean, it's sad. It's really sad.
If you're financially ruined, that could be just as bad.
But let's see how best we could treat, especially with this season.
Okay, I'll speak about them more, but we have, oh gosh, we have Tuna Puna on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you.
Caller, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, morning.
Good morning to the panel there.
Morning.
Yeah. My problem is, as a senior citizen, I will tell you something this morning. What is being done to us, right? The people in the higher category and who handles everything, their business are fixed. But when it comes to the middle class and the poor people, they have to suffer. There are people out there waiting for nearly 2 years to get their pension processed and their social welfare, people who generally need it. They don't even have food, they can't do nothing. They don't even have money in the bank, much less to have $25,000. I think that is a disgrace. And the outer world here, what is taking place here. I know all over the world, people getting a pension or they're getting certain grants, and not grants, but benefits when you deserve it. And it's very, very unfair because this rumor was going around a long, long time ago. They can't come and tell us that they didn't see and they don't know. They planned it a long time ago because if you look at the senior citizens for the past 11 years, did they ever get any increase? Not, they could have given 1% even, and the people could have accepted and say, well, they care for us. Nobody cares for us except themselves because those who have, more they have, more they will get. Those who they have not cannot get and receive anything, and the less they will get to cope with this high cost of living and this crisis taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Now, just I don't know if the caller was aware, but the controversial bill to amend pensions to limit who could access a grant. So it's not actually a pension. So there's that confusion, I think, to the public.
This is the government pension.
Yes, right. But because this is not something people pay into, right? Okay. So this is an assistance meant for the ones most in need. Right. And the thought is, well, at least the minister, her off-the-cuff remarks, right, with regards to the intentions of, I guess the whole legislation is to try to tighten up the ship and prevent fraud, right? Now, I'll say this, the quick retraction by the government is not normal behavior. So usually if they want to kind of defend themselves, they're not going to do that because that's admitting guilt, right? Okay. So they're going to kind of play defense and not talk about it and just have all sing from the same hymn book, but the AG did say, I'll take responsibility. Not the acting AG. Don't blame him. Blame me because I am the AG. This slipped through. I am the one in charge. I don't know. Maybe it does mean that he's willing to bear up further consequences, right? Or at the very least, the public blame. But this is interesting. I'm actually willing to believe the government on this one, believe it or not. And I'm the guy that says that you know, it's hard to believe them given the circumstances. But it can happen because they're giving me up. But the thing is, I think what people don't understand, I'm not saying that they're in the clear. What they're saying is a staffer kind of did something when they weren't looking, right? Okay. And I'm like, all right, I'll take that at face value. But then the implication of that is, how did this happen? Did this happen before? What are the consequences of this happening? Has this happened in another bill? Like, you know, what are the... Now, they didn't name the staffer. So to some extent, he's not using a staffer as a scapegoat. Right. I would say if they named the person and fired him and stuff, that would be then, oh, that's a scapegoat. But no, he said, I'll take responsibility. So I'll leave that there. Let's take the last caller on the line. Faisal, good morning, caller, on here.
Sure, now, I got broken up there, so you didn't catch me.
Okay.
What I am saying to you is that Mr. Hines is supposed to be brought to book.
Yeah.
Because you have 7 fire stations without any tender.
Yes.
You have 2 fire stations completely closed down.
Yes.
And this is not the first fire victim that we are talking about. Over the years, people have been burned to death. And the situation remains the same. So he should be brought before a tribunal and jailed or fired for incompetence. You know, not properly resourcing the fire services. Because you're hearing over and over from the head of the Fire Services Association about the lack of resources and government's unwillingness to supplement them in the way they would like to be supplemented. With respect to Philip Alexander, Sean, and I want you to get this clearly, I commend Philip Alexander for representing the wider population who would have felt the pain that the Morrison family are now feeling. You see? This is an opportunity that he's taking to remind the government of their incompetence and failures to deal with things. Mr. Hine has blood on his hands. He has blood on his hands. With respect to Marvin Gonzalez, I think a tribunal should also be held publicly to decide what was the situation with the water situation in Arima. Because they continue to lie to the public. Take care, my friend.
Well, caller, first on that point, 1, there's an investigation. That should be investigated as part of it. I've said that. 2, we have reports from the Assistant Chief Fire Service Officer, I can't remember his exact title, basically saying, no, water was not a problem. So there's a part of it that's like, why is this a thing? Right. But the fire service is saying we're not retracting the statement that there wasn't water available. Right. So I'm like, oh, okay, time out. What are we trying to achieve here? Because if the fire service saying water was not a problem, we don't know exactly what that means. Because it was truck-borne water. Was it a truck-borne water was available? Was it not available? Right? Are they directly saying, but there still wasn't pressure in the pipes because they have people neighbors in the community saying there was water in the pipes at the time.
No, but was there a fire hydrant at that location?
I believe that's not in dispute.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly where the fire hydrant is located, but as far as I'm aware, there were 2 fire hydrants that are part of the conversation.
Right.
But
now, having pressure in your pipe mightn't mean
enough for the fire service.
hydrant.
I get that. Yeah. But the point is we're getting conflicting reports with regards to the water availability, right? And no one has actually gone to the detail to say there was water but not enough pressure. No one has said that. I have pointed that out.
Okay.
But no one has actually said that. And I don't think the fire service used those words. Now, is Minister Hines responsible? I would say technically no. Sorry, technically yes. Practically probably not because it's a budgetary issue. He's not in charge of the budget. Let's just be real. Because then for him, he could give the fire service more money out of his allocation. And then we will complain, well, the Coast Guard didn't get enough money, or the police service didn't get enough money, or so-and-so didn't get enough money. For him, it's a zero-sum game. Well, technically, for the government budget, it is also as well. But this comes now to the level of cabinet, because cabinet, to some extent, are going to make decisions like that, I would imagine, right? With regards to some of the closures, the Prime Minister said, well, our station was run down, we had to close it, we're going to replace it. One could argue maybe that's taking too long. One could argue the maintenance and oversight of the maintenance from both the executive of the fire service and the government are to blame in that situation. But, you know, we seem to not be able to maintain things. The property of the various services seem to not have the skills to maintain things. Now, is that an oversight problem? Is that a service leadership problem? Is it both? All of those things could probably come out in the investigation. Minister Gonzalez, I get where he's coming from. I understand Minister Hines. I get where you're coming from with that criticism. But this situation, I think, is bigger than him and the authority of any one minister. And I've said this about all the ministers. They only have so much decision-making power before cabinet as a whole makes decision. If you want to go to cabinet on that level, fine, we could have that debate. With regards to Philip Edward Alexander, first of all, one of my callers I know disagrees. At the very least, if not 2, I will also disagree. I think that you could have made the point in a better way. It's similar to when the Prime Minister said, I am not in your bedroom. The police had a very pertinent point with special victims that it's hard without reports because police cannot just look into private homes to collect evidence. They need people to come forward.
Yeah, and it's a safety issue on behalf of the victim as well.
Right, but when the Prime Minister said that, what happened? It turned the discussion to how the Prime Minister could say that as opposed to the point he was trying to make.
Right.
And I think this whole thing with Philip, look, what is the discussion? Part of the discussion today was whether or not Philip's words were, you know, too far or not too far, as opposed to the tragedy itself. And I don't think it was appropriate. And this is why, to the other caller's point, I wasn't necessarily too hard on Philip. Part of it is I don't want to politicize the issue. Part of it is I don't necessarily agree with the principles of what he's saying. I just don't like how he said it and the timing, right? We want to go with people are in grief. All right, let them grieve. At the end of the day, they're human too. We could hit them with Bacchanal a couple of weeks from now or next week or whatever. We don't have to forget things that happen in this country. If that's the excuse, well, you know, people forget things after a week. Well, then maybe that's a we problem.
9 days.
Not at that 9 days? Did it last so long?
It does feel like that.
Sometimes I think it's even less than 9 days.
Yeah.
All right, well, ASP Arun, thanks for joining me once again.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I just want to tell you, the viewership, to be safe, continue to be vigilant, look out for each other. It's the Christmas season, enjoy yourselves, but be responsible with it. Be responsible with your actions and your experiences and how we go about. Is there a program Monday?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yeah,
so then I'll see you on Monday.
We will see him Monday. Hopefully nothing happens between now and then, right? And folks, I guess part of it is I am the guy that speaks about communication, and I will come down normally. This is a tricky issue. A lady and her 2 children, one of them was a small child, died. I don't want to be stepping all over the family's grief right now because to some extent I think that's what Philip did when he wanted to politicize it now, right? Regardless of the wider population's concerns, some respect for the family and the situation and the friends. One of the things that touched me, and you might say that I'm a sop and I'm an idealist and I'm a fool and I'm a gullible, Minister of Communications Simon Inaugural, one of the first confirmations of her death was seeing one of his social media posts where he basically showed a set of selfies that he would take with Minister Maurice Julian.
Right.
You know, that was just a thing that they had to show their friendship. And it's like, look, they're real people. We're peeling back the curtain. It's unfortunate that it took this for us to see them have real emotions. And it's unfortunate that this might be what might drive some change to make things better. But at the end of the day, that doesn't take away from the fact that it did happen.
Yeah,
and
people died.
And people did die.
I think
and we do have to have...
remember that in our conversations publicly, as a nation, somebody died or people died.
Yeah, like we could do the politics at a later date. And more importantly, let's wait for the report before we really jump in on the political bandwagon.
And whatnot.
Right, yeah. So you know how that goes.
Yeah. But I mean, you all as a journalist need to keep on top of those issues.
We try. The problem is they tend to be overshadowed by the next issue. That's why it's 9 days. Folks, make today a good day. Thanks again, once again, ASP Arun. Thanks to all the callers. Make today a good day, as my co-host would say. Remember your allegiance to each other and to the Republic. Stay safe out there. Be mindful of your safety, but also health considerations. Everybody huddling up in office parties and hugging and kissing and handshaking and all of that. You know, might be a little more flus going around already. It's nice to be nice. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Between the Bank and the Gutter, a novel about street dwellers in Port of Spain. This is a book to make you both laugh and cry. Above all, it takes you to that special space that only street dwellers know. In this moving and riveting human interest story, Harry journeys from insanity to sanity while living on the streets of Port of Spain. Now available at Metropolitan Books, 12 Aripita Avenue, Woodbrook. Paper-based bookshop, 14 Alcazar Street, Woodbrook. WESN, 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook. And the home store branches located at Barataria, Shogunas, and East Gates Mall. Autographed copies now available on request. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh. I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People, and Closer to the Church.